Today I'd like to talk to you about brand marketing versus direct marketing. Brand marketing is the concept of taking something that's in the unconscious part of your brain and moving it to the conscious and making some type of a positive association with that. In contrast, direct marketing is effectively converting a prospect into a customer. In Jan Tish's book called Duct Tape Marketing, he talks about a concept called that basically the premise of it says that in order for a customer to buy your product, he needs to know you exist, like your brand, and then trust you before they make a purchasing decision. The brand marketing, or what we sometimes call brand awareness, really kind of covers the know part. They know what you are, and perhaps even works a little bit with the like part of that know, like, trust continuum. Whereas the direct marketing is really the building the trust and actually getting the customer to be converted from a prospect into a customer of yours. So I'd like to talk a little bit right now, focusing principally on the brand awareness part. All right, brand awareness is part of the kind of helps with the direct marketing effort. Unto itself, it doesn't create sales. It's there as a precursor to kind of help with the direct marketing effort. That said, brand awareness campaigns need to be a constant effort. It's not something that you can just do one and done kind of a thing. It's something that you need to continue to kind of keep pushing forward to go ahead and create your brand awareness. However, it doesn't have to be an expensive effort on your particular part. But here, let's talk a little bit about some free methods to create some brand awareness. One of them, a very popular one, would be a press release. There's many press release sites out there. You can write a press release, release your press release to them, and they'll publicly distribute that to the various organizations out there that do some of the press releases, and may get picked up nationally depending on the quality of your press release and the quality of your product and the timing of it. Another good advantage, or another no-cost type of a thing, is to put together a message and contact your local television station. I know that when I had an invisible fencing company, which was rather a novel product at the time, we went to all the local networks at the time, ABC, NBC, CBS, and each one of them picked up a public interest stories. And over the course of several weeks, they played them. Remember, each one of those is just one single data point that goes out there as part of that brand messaging. You need to do quite a few of them. Similarly, you can go to your local papers, your business authors there, the writers, journalists in the paper are always looking for news stories that they want to go ahead and include. And so you create a public interest story, they'll be more than happy to kind of pick that up. Getting away from the mass appeal kind of a thing, I've often found it a valuable trait to create a poster and essentially find other like businesses and exchange posters. A good example is a sporting goods store that sells golf clubs, for example, might be a great place to list a poster for a particular golf course in town, and vice versa, where you go to the golf course and have the poster there for a local sporting goods store, those kind of things. Again, you're segmenting the population as they're going to these particular things. And the last of the free kinds of things that really kind of come to mind pretty quickly are things like Craigslist listings, those kind of things that you can generally do, and those are free. Here's a couple ideas, generally under $10. Business cards is a really good example. I know that when I was, again, invisible fencing, I would, quite frankly, I would take my kids to the mall. I would literally drop them off on one end of a column of traffic, and I would instruct the kids to eventually, effectively walk down the row of cars and stick a business card in everybody's windshield or on the little rubber piece that right above the door, or something along that line. Some people may have some issues with that because unwanted solicitation. People may think that throwing the business card away creates a bit of pollution. It's not an illegal thing unless essentially it says posted, no solicitors in the parking lot and so on and so forth. So it's not a legal thing. The most that the owner of the parking lot can tell you is please don't come back. but it's not something you would get arrested for. This is something you may want to kind of take into consideration, especially if you target a business. Again, if we use a golf club example right there, if you were in front of a sporting goods store and you were promoting your golf course, for example, you'd have a lot more segmented people actually going to that sporting goods store that might actually be golfers and that kind of stuff. Another good example, we just recently got done with an election, and every election year I see streets full of all kinds of yard signs and so on and so forth. But those yard signs can clearly be extended to include such things as marketing about your particular company, especially if you're a house painter or a roofer or something like that, where somebody can see your work. Certainly, while you're there, stick a yard sign in front of the property that you're working. Also, at intersections, for example, you may want to stick a yard sign out there. People are stopped at a stoplight or a stop sign, for example. They may be glancing around as they slowly work their way to the front of the line or wait for the light to turn green. It's a good place to have a yard sign where people can go ahead and actually see that. Picket signs. We associate picket signs with bad things about businesses and organizations trying to picket a particular business. But if you had a restaurant or you had a local business downtown and you send one of your idle employees with a picket sign to walk up and down the sign saying, eat at Fred's Cafe, or shop at Mildred's consignment shop, or something along that line, people would take notice because it's something that's out of the ordinary. People like things that are out of the ordinary and kind of spot those kind of things and internalize those messages and bring them from the unconscious mind to the conscious mind pretty quickly. A couple ideas, maybe cost a little bit more, maybe in the $75 range. Banners. These are like canvas banners or like a vinyl type of banners. Usually they have little grommets or something like that you can then hang with a bungee cord. Frequently I see them hanging on chain link fences in the school, or most recently I saw a gentleman selling bonsai trees on the side of the road, and he had a banner that literally ran the entire length of his car. And so when you drove up, obviously you could see the bonsai trees, but you definitely saw that he was selling those bonsai trees with that banner. Generally, you can have those professionally produced for under $75. As tax time nears, most people have often seen those people sitting there, or actually open house guys. They'll have those spinning signs. Usually there's a gentleman or a gal that's sitting there listening to some kind of music and spinning a sign around, maybe a little arrow pointing, open house this way, or, we do taxes kind of a thing. And certainly the movement of that generates something that's out of the ordinary, something that you wouldn't expect to see, and consequently people kind of focus on that. Ever popular is the magnetic door sign that you might put on a vehicle. Generally those are maybe $30, $35 a piece to have them professionally produced, and then use a pair of them on each one of the doors. Still again under $75. Again, this is a relatively cheap thing. The beauty of this is when you're using your vehicle for personal reasons, you can take it off. When you're using it for business reasons, you can go ahead and put them on. And for the people who are a little bit more permanent, maybe a fleet vehicle or something, certainly something that you wouldn't be driving the kids to soccer practice with, or maybe so. Maybe a more permanent situation is decals that literally stick to the car on a door. Most of those can be had for under about $75 for a pair of them as well. Some a little bit slightly more expensive, but provide a little bit a greater visibility. Let's say somewhere in the neighborhood of under $150. We often see cars, especially pizza delivery, are very popular. They'll put one of those lighted signs on the roof of the vehicle. That's certainly a way to get some exposure as you're driving, especially in the evening. If your business caters to people in the evening, you drive around, everybody notices that lighted sign on the roof of your vehicle. Costumes is an interesting another avenue. Usually many of those costumes can be purchased for under $150. We've all seen them on the side of the road. Somebody maybe dressed up as a hot dog, or Lady Liberty, or maybe a big chicken advertising a wings franchise or something along that line. Another popular piece is sandwich boards. We often see them particularly in restaurants. Sandwich board is essentially one of those little A-frame deals that sit maybe on the sidewalk. It's printable on both sides. And for about $150, it's half the price of that to actually buy the sandwich board, about another half to get it professionally printed up. The nice part about sandwich boards is you can move them from, leave them at an intersection, as we did with those the signs earlier, the yard signs, and these are slightly larger, but the beauty of them is they can be moved quite a bit. I often see them when they're advertising a football game or something along that line. There's also the wearable version. We've all seen movies like Las Vegas Vacation, where a gentleman is sitting there walking around with two pieces of like cardboard in front of him, and he's walking up and down the street. Cardboard is kind of connected with a piece of ribbon or something along that line. They actually make wearable ones, similar in price to the stand-up A-frame type sandwich boards. So that's certainly another option for you to make. Or you can either make them or purchase them. And last among those particular items there, in about the $150 range, is using a public address system. We often see old movies, for example, where you'll see a vehicle driving down the road, and it'll have a speaker on the roof, and inside the car somebody will either be playing a tape with a message on there, or talking about a particular candidate. Very popular for me growing up in the city. I saw a lot of ice cream trucks. They would play music, and it was like the Pied Piper. When that music would play, the kids could hear it, and they would go running to go off and do that. Again, that's a great way to create brand awareness in a relatively cheap way at under $150, especially if you're selling direct business to consumer. Some other ideas for some low-cost marketing efforts. Not so much a price thing. Some of these are probably a little bit over $150, but a wall painting, for example. We often see barns, we call them barn paintings. Driving across the country in my many trips, I couldn't help but see like mail pouch tobacco was real popular in doing barn painting and those kind of things. And I've often seen many a barn printed with a message. And so certainly that, same buildings, brick buildings, that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be painted on. It could be a big old, like a banner or something like that you would paste up against a brick wall or something like that. Another popular one, somewhere maybe in the $150 range again, is what are sometimes called air dancers. We've all seen them. They're also called tube dancers. They generally have a big fan in them, and they usually has a gentleman. The air blows up through there, and their arms wave, and their bodies undulate, and so on and so forth. And they can be placed outside of your business, and many people can spot that and direct their attention from maybe where they're pointing, looking down the road ahead of them, and then turning their head to spot you or something like that. Parade floats. Each year we have Christmas parades and Thanksgiving parades and those kind of things that run through town. St. Patrick's Day parade. This is a great way to take a trailer or something like that, put your message on it, and include that as part of a parade float. Generally, they're things that you'd make at home and not very expensive. Theater ads. If you go to the movie theater, for example, we often see when you get to the movie a little bit early, they'll have a little ad popping up. Maybe they'll have some little Hollywood trivia and stuff, but then in the middle of that, they'll have a little ad for a particular business or something like that. Those are generally pretty affordable on a daily basis, although you might have to sign up for a rather longer contract. Another avenue, especially if you're a grand opening or something like that, I don't know that this would be something that you may want to consider a long-term kind of a thing, but a searchlight, ones that they search the skies and they move around, and it creates very much of a curiosity, and people are forced to go back and see what the origin of that searchlight is to go ahead and find them. And lastly, I've got a couple kind of uncommon brand awareness types of things. As a gentleman going into bars where or some other form there where they have men's rooms, ladies' rooms, very particular in bars. Above the urinal will be a board with a bunch of ads space on it. Let's face it, your gentlemen, they're sitting there. They've got a minute or so while they're emptying their bladder. They have nothing else to do except for stare straight ahead, and you're a captive audience for roughly a minute. Public transportation is another one, whether it's taxi cabs. On the trunk, you sometimes see those little ads as they drive around town, whether it's the side of a particular bus or something along that line. These are ways to get your message, and these buses and taxis are driving around anyway all day long, and so they're carrying your message forward. And lastly, bench ads, especially if the target of your people are people that may not have their own vehicles, or a bus bench may be a great place to have that, or the enclosures where they might sit waiting for a bus. Depending if you live in the city, that's a very popular way to go do that. So thanks for watching, and these are some basic ideas on brand awareness, and have a wonderful day.